Hello and welcome to another video. So we're continuing Unlimited Week with some great decks. So first off for this video is Swordcraft. Swordcraft does pretty well, especially when you're going for a more aggressive variant. This also means that you can do some really crazy damage. This deck also isn't too expensive compared to many other decks out there, as you are only running 6 legendaries, which 6 is still a big number. 3 I think would put it in the real budget category, but I mean, it's not too bad considering the legendary cost these days. And of course this deck's still running a fair few golds. I mean, 2 round tables, 2 innocents, 3 Perseus and a chromatic, but everything else is pretty reasonable. So this deck, obviously being an aggro deck, wants to close the game as soon as possible, preferably around turn 6. That seems to be the optimal time to win the game. So we'll get right into this and check out a few games. So our first match against Blood. Blood has shown itself and proved itself in Unlimited to be a fairly competent and strong aggro deck, and to have a lot of variation ranging from Vengeance, Control, mid-range and everything in between. I really enjoy fighting Blood just because you kind of never know what you're going to come up against. So we get a pretty decent hand. Getting a Perseus, Kunoichi, another Perseus and an Albert is all going to set us up nicely. Getting as much damage as you can. Blood not having a 1-drop really helped me out. I think mainly because the ambling nerf really hurt Blood in a way that just wasn't too expected. Not being able to counter a 1-2 drop from Sword really does hurt Blood. But we get some nice damage in early, creating a pretty good board. Considering we can actually go into Vagabond next turn as well on top of this is absolutely crazy. We can easily trade this off. They will heal for 2, but we instantly negate that with these followers, so being able to do that nicely while at the same time having a ambushed follower, which Blood doesn't tend to be able to deal with very easily. Of course, Wardrobe Raider, in the prime of its youth, killing off as many followers as it can get, but not really surprising me in any other way yet. So I have a few options. I can just go and completely set this up. Just set up the Kunoichi, go into my next turn really hard with my board. Either going into Albert Quickblader or Round Table Assembly. Either one is going to be super strong against this, especially with an Evolve. And I think that's probably the best way to go with it. Otherwise I could go Round Table Assembly, play out those Juliets, go face for 6 instead. But either way, I'm going to get the same amount of damage, as I can't play the Round Table Assembly and Quickblader for 7, so I can only go for 6 damage max either way. But at least this way, I can pretty much guarantee lethal next turn. There is not much Blood would have, except maybe Revelations, that could really slow me down. And even if they did rev, it just wouldn't have been enough anyway. Plus, if I had added that up correctly to start with, I would have realized we actually had lethal. So, just completely going over my head there for a second. Next up, the Battle of Titans, Sword versus Sword.
You must die.
So, they have the glorious Albert leader, but Erica, being best waifu in the Swordcraft right now, is going to hopefully take this down fairly well. Especially with a nice Perseus, a nice Princess Vanguard, and Vanguard itself. Should go nicely. We have a lot of Vanguard named cards, honestly. I mean, Centaur Vanguard, I mean, Princess Vanguard, normal Vanguard. We have so many Vanguard cards in this. Quickblader, I'm a little bit better than playing a 1-2 right now, just because I can take advantage of the immediate damage that Quickblader can do. And I can actually trade fairly well with this using the Princess. Plus, drawing the Centaur Vanguard opens up a whole nother route of play, being able to drop Perseus and Centaur Vanguard regardless of having this 1-3 on board to get its Storm effect. That's why I actually run Perseus over over normal Vanguard in other decks. Because I do like Perseus's combination, but in this particular deck you want to run both to get as many 1-drops as you can onto the board as quickly as possible. So we couldn't ask for a better turn 4. They completely pass, having nothing that can really do anything to us, which is great. and we can just go as wide as we can for as much damage as we can before going into turn 5, where we can either set up for the next turn with Kunoichi Master or throw Albert for a guaranteed 5 damage. Because at this point, even a ward isn't going to do much to stop us. So we do see the evolve on the 2-4. I think that was a little odd in my opinion. I probably would have evolved the ward just because it will absorb that 3-5 instead of just being able to kill it with a 1-2 Perseus here. We also end up with the round table assembly, which is perfect. Even if stuff is removed now, I can easily go face, and holding onto the Albert actually becomes slightly better. Just because I know that even if they play a ward here, at least now with these ambushes, I should at least be able to kill something.
I lost.
So all we really need to do would stick the 3-2 to the board and be able to clear a ward. So a little awkward now. That 6-6 is really hard to deal with, even with the trade, because I'm just going to be one-off lethal. But, I mean, it's not too bad. So actually, sorry, I'm not one-off lethal because, yeah, Princess is 6, not 5 when you use an Evo. I'm always forgetting that. So we actually end up perfectly on lethal. It's so easy for me to miss these watching them back because they just go so fast. So far this deck I've played 5 games with. I have gone 3-2 alternating, so win 1, lose 1, win 1, lose 1, which means I am gaining points fairly consistently, and I think I've got a little bit better at going against it, and it'd be very easy to pull off some win streaks with this deck if you just get a couple of the decent draws and some alright matches, especially going first, really does make a big difference as well. So that's what I like about this deck. It seems to be quite strong. Even against most decks, like even Daria. Daria goes off, you know, around turn 5-ish, turn 6-ish in Unlimited. And Sword obviously is looking to have already finished the game by then. So unless Daria happens to get every single spell they need to counter my board, it's very hard for them to come back. So we do get a fairly decent draw as well. Being able to burst out 5 damage on turn 3 like this is great. Giving that damage to the face, putting them on 13 and leaving them in a really awkward position. Of course they do return that Perseus. Not the worst thing for us to see. And Vagabond is actually great, being able to set him up now, ready for the evolve next turn. There isn't much Rune can do against Vagabond either. I mean, ambushes are only really susceptible to AoE and random target spells, and most Rune decks right now, at least in Unlimited from what I have seen, don't tend to be running much AoE, if any, most of the time. So we're not worried about that, and as far as random target removal goes, it's not a big deal. The only real fear, I guess, from Rune would be Transformation, but I am not seeing many Earth Rune around either, so it's really not something I was worried about, especially at this point after seeing what cards they've played. So I have also found that if I'm up against a 5-4 ward like this, I nearly always want to go for Hope Strategist, because having that 4-6 body allows me to both remove stuff, set up a ward, and really just take as much damage as I can to their face. I found that really helps me in those matchups. Of course we have the Albert, or even the Kunoichi Novice Trooper Perseus, so we can either go for a complete board flood or a solid amount of damage. Either or is going to be absolutely amazing. Of course, Magic Owl, a little rough. I mean, it does mean they can go as wide as they want, especially with a Fate's Hand costing 0. So 1 Chimera, ha ha ha, 2 Chimera, oh, this is getting rough now, and 3 Chimera, so having all 3 Chimeras add 0 on turn 5. That is almost a perfect hand from the Daria player. Definitely keeping me on my toes. So I decided my best option here was to go with the Vagabond Frog Evo, go face, kill off one of these Chimeras, making sure that it's going to be extremely difficult for Daria to lethal me from this position without some really good buff and storm. So I was really lucky there. If I had have left up everything here, would have been exceptionally easy for them to have something to kill me. I mean, in total they would have been extremely close. With only 4 damage, they would have actually had lethal if I left that card up last turn. Luckily I didn't, and having Albert in hand guarantees me the win. Absolutely perfect. So hope you guys did enjoy this video. This deck seems to do quite well. I definitely would recommend giving it a shot. It's reasonably priced. I mean, 6 legendaries, reasonably priced these days. Not too hard either. I mean, we've got a couple of quite good legendaries that are going to be good for a while in both rotation and unlimited. And of course Albert, which is a staple to Sword in unlimited anyway, so if you've been playing a while you most likely have that. If you are newer to the game though, you may not have Albert and want to craft it. In that case it's really difficult because Albert is a very strong card. Of course you can also run 3 Celia. In this deck I only run 2 because that's what I feel comfortable with, and I'm running 1 Chromatic Duel in that place just because I like to have that as an option, especially if I'm going into a later game where I really need it. So if you did enjoy this video, hit that like button, subscribe, you'll find the deck list in the description below, and I will catch you guys next time. See ya.